Alright, today we are going to be talking about how to write, solve, and graph linear inequalities. This is 37CW. Uh-oh, that's okay. Press OK. We're good. Okay. So it says solve each inequality, graph, and write the interval notation. Don't worry about interval notation, okay? That's okay. We're not going to see that on the test, okay? So don't panic. So what we're going to do is just solve the inequality. So if you notice for number 1, it says 17 is greater than or equal to 7 plus 2p. So your main goal is you want to get p by itself. So if you have to, you can cover up the part with the variable. Okay? Hopefully you're covering up the 2p as well on your paper. So now what you got to do is say, I have 7. Alright, it's a positive. How do you move 7 over? If it's a positive, we know that it is a negative to move things over because it's the opposite. So that is gone. And now you have 17 minus 7, and that is 10, is greater than or equal to 2p. Okay? So now you also got to ask yourself, is your p by itself? And it is not, so it says 2p. So the opposite of multiplication, because whenever things are side by side next to each other, it is multiplication. We know the opposite of multiply is divide. So divide by 2 on both sides. So 10 divided by 2 is 5, is greater than or equal to p. So now, I know you guys are used to seeing the variable on the left-hand side. So what we can do is switch it, okay? So I have the p here, and I'm going to put the 5 on the right-hand side. Now, if you notice, the inequality symbol is open on the 5. So that means that when you flip it, you want to make sure that the inequality symbol is open on the 5. And you have a line on it. Okay? The way that I like to think of it is, if you're hungry, you want to eat more. Okay? So you want to eat more, so you can transform the inequality into a mouth. Because you are hungry and you want to eat more. So the thing that it's open to means that it is bigger. Okay? So now what we're going to do is graph it. Okay? So I have 5 on the number line. If you need to put in 0 or whatever else you need, that is fine. Okay? And we say there is no, actually wait, there is a line underneath it. Since there is a line, that means you must have a closed circle. Okay? And now it says p is smaller. It is less than. So where do you shade? Less, left. All these values are smaller than 5. Also, a cool little trick is, if your variable is on the left-hand side, that means that you can shade to where the little inequality symbol is pointed to. It's pointing to the left, so that's why we can shade to the left. This is only true if your variable is on the left-hand side. Alright, number 2. If you notice, we have a number and parentheses. Whenever you see that, you must, you guessed it, distribute. So you got 6x, and then 6 times negative 4 is negative 24, is less than or equal to 6x minus 3. Uh-oh, we got variables on both sides. So what you're going to do is move the x over. Okay? So it is a positive 6x. I'm going to move this over. Opposite of positive is a negative. Good job. So now if you notice, they cancel out. So you are left with negative 24 is less than or equal to negative 3. If you notice, there are no more x's. That's okay. We can still figure this out. So you gotta say to yourself, is negative 24 smaller than negative 3? If you said, yes it is, you are correct. So when that is a true statement, okay, negative 24 is definitely smaller than negative 3. Since that is true, that means that you have all real numbers. Okay, so the little fancy R means all real numbers. Okay, so if you have to graph it on the number line, that means that if you see you have arrows at both ends, that means it's every single possibility. Since it's every single possibility, all real numbers, you gotta shade your whole entire line. Because it's every single number that is there. Okay? Alright, number 3. So I have 4x minus 7 is greater than or equal to 9. So your main goal is to isolate the variable. So we're going to move the 7 over. If you see, it's a negative. The opposite of a negative is a positive. Good job. What you do to one side, you got to do to the other. 9 plus 7 is 16. So now what we have to do is still isolate your variable. So it says 4 times x. Since you said times, the opposite of times is divide. What you do to one side, you do to the other side. All right. So far, we have solutions that are bigger than 4. So we're going to put 4 on the number line, and we have a circle. And if you notice, there is a line underneath, so that means you got to close your circle. And it is saying that x is bigger than 4. Where are things bigger than 4? They are to the right. So just in case you weren't sure, you can actually label more points, more numbers. Okay? So you got to say to yourself, is 3 bigger than 4? Nope. So that's why you don't shade towards that 3. But 5 is bigger than 4, so that's why you shade towards that direction. All right, take a look at number 4. We're moving along. If you notice, I have parentheses. So we got to use the distributive property. So 0 is less than 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. Okay? Again, your main goal of solving is to isolate your variable and find out your possible solutions. So it says 6 times m. So the opposite of times. Actually, wait a minute. Hopefully you guys are thinking the same thing. Like, wait a minute. Okay, so what we're actually to do is we're going to move that 12 over to the other side. Okay, so it's a negative 12. So the opposite of negative is a positive. So that cancel out. So I have 0 plus 12 is 12 is less than 6m. Okay, and so your main goal is to isolate the variable. So I'm going to divide by 6 on both sides. So I got m. All right, that is the lesson sign, 2. Now, you don't have to do this, but if it makes you feel comfortable, you can totally rewrite that so that your letter is on the left-hand side. Okay? But if not, this really reads 2 is smaller than m. So the lowest that it can be is 2. But again, if you like to rewrite it so that your letter is on the left, go for it. Okay, so we switch places. And now if you notice that it is open on the m, that's why m is bigger. So we got to do the same exact thing when you flip the m and the 2. The sign has to change as well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put it on the number line. So I put a 2 here. And now we got to say to ourselves, is there a line? There is no line. That means that it is an open circle. So now we say, where are things bigger than m? And things that are bigger or to the right. All right, there we go. Number 4 down. Now, let's take a look at number 5. So, your main goal, again, is to isolate the variable. See how it says positive 3? The opposite of positive is subtract. Okay, the 3's cancel out, and you're left with negative x over 3 is less than or equal to 5 minus 3 is 2. Now, again, your main goal is to get the letter by itself. Now, you also want to make sure that your letter is also a positive, okay? So what we're going to do is, see how it says it's division? We know the opposite of division is multiplication. Now, remember how we said that we wanted the variable to be a positive? So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to make that 3 a negative, okay? Because that will make sure that the negative 3's cancel out. So you're left with x, okay? Now, if you remember what you do to one side, you got to do to the other side. So I get 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. All right. Hopefully, bells and whistles are going off in your head right now. Because if you multiply or divide by a negative, you gotta make sure that you flip that inequality. So that less than or equal to now becomes a greater than or equal to. Okay? So you gotta remember, when you multiply or divide by a negative, you flip the inequality. Hopefully you can read this. There we go. Okay, so that's what we gotta remember that. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna label -6, and we say there is a line. Since there is a line, that means you gotta close your circle. Okay, and now where do we go? X is bigger than -6. Since things are bigger, that's what we want. We're gonna shade to the right. Everything is greater on the right hand side of that number. Okay. So again, also if you need to, you could totally label where 0 is to kind of help you out. Okay. So we can kind of say, take that 0 and plug it in, and you got to say to yourself, is 0 bigger than -6? We know that 0 is in fact. Actually, is that 0 in the right place? I don't think it is. All good. It's okay. We can fix it. There we go. That makes more sense. Hopefully you guys were saying, huh? What is she doing? It's okay. We got it. We fixed it. Okay. So yes, 0 is definitely bigger than -6. Since that is true, that's why we shaded towards that region. Okay? It's all good. We fix it. Everybody makes mistakes, right? But we got it. Okay. Number 6. So what we got to do now is we got to take a look and see what I have to do. I have a 2 and I have parentheses. So what you're going to do is you're going to multiply because it is the distributive property. Yes. And we know that 2 times 3 is 6. And then I got the x. 2 times 7 is 14. Okay. So you have letters on both sides. So you got to try to figure out how to move the letters over. So it's a positive 6x. So that means I'm going to subtract. What you do to one side, you do to the other. They cancel out, so you have 5 is bigger than 14. Huh? Is 5 greater than 14? No. That is a false inequality. Okay? Since it is false, 5 is actually smaller than 14. Since it's false, that means that there is no solution. Also, you can write it with the little O with the line through it, and that means that there's no solution. Since there's no solution, do you think we need to shade that number line? We do not need to shade that number line. Yes. All right, so now we can go on to question number 7. Where is it? There we go. Found it. Okay, question number 7. It says 2d plus 7 is greater than or equal to 16 plus d. So what we're going to do is move the letters over. So I like to move it over to the left-hand side. So I see that it's a positive d. So I'm going to subtract because the opposite of positive is a negative. That cancels. So I have 2d minus 1d is just plain old d plus 7 is greater than or equal to 16. Now you got to say to yourself, is your letter by itself? It is not. It says plus 7 afterwards. So opposite of positive is a negative. So now I have d is greater than or equal to 9. Yes. Okay. So now what we got to do is put it on the number line. You can always write down 0, 9. Okay. So or I just do 9. And since I have a line, that means I close my circle. And we want to shade everything that is greater than 9. So everything that is greater than 9 is to the right. So also, if you have to, you can totally label other numbers to kind of help you. So you can say, wait a minute, is 8 bigger than 9? 8 is definitely not bigger than 9. That's why you don't shade towards that number. We know that 10 is bigger than 9. That's why we shade to that number because 10 definitely works in our solution. Okay? Number 8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my letters over to the left. Okay? You can do it different ways, but I like to have my letters on the left so I don't have to worry about rewriting my final answer. So it's a positive 3x, so now I'm going to subtract 3x on both sides. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So negative 9, negative 1x minus 3x is negative 4x is greater than 11. Okay? Now you got to say, is my letter by itself? It is not by itself. So I'm see that it's a negative 9. The opposite of negative is a positive. And remember, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. Okay. And 11 plus 9 is 20. Okay. Is your letter by itself? It is not. Okay. Don't be freaked out by that negative, okay? You gotta make sure that you remember that this is actually multiplication because it is side by side next to each other. Negative 4x and 4x. They both mean that the number is being multiplied to the variable. So please be careful about that. This right here does not mean that you have to add. It means that to isolate, you gotta divide by the negative 4. So again, do not make that mistake by adding. Okay, it says negative 4 times x because they're next to each other. It is not an addition problem or subtraction problem. Okay, so I cancel out the negative 4s, so you get x and negative 5. Bells, whistles, fireworks should go off in your head because we divided by a negative on both sides. So since we divided by a negative, that means you gotta flip the inequality. Don't forget about that. Okay? So I put negative 5 on here, and I don't have a line. So that means I open my circle, and now where things smaller, you shade to the left. And number 9. Okay, so we got to make sure that we have letters on the left, numbers on the right. So I say 2x. I'm going to move that over. It's a positive, so I'm going to subtract. What you do to one side, you do to the other. That cancels. So 5x minus 2x is 3x minus 20 is less than 1. Is your variable by itself? It is not. It says minus 20, so that means I'm going to add. What you do to one side, you do to the other side. My letter is still not by itself, so we got to isolate it. Okay, so again, whenever two numbers are side by side next to each other, it is multiplication. So the opposite is division. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So the 3's cancel out, so I get x is less than 7. So I label 7, and now I have an open circle because there is no line. Where are things smaller than 7? Things that are smaller than 7 are to the left. Alright, so I keep on rolling. So we got 9 down, we got to do number 10. Wait for it. We're going to move this. Alright, there we go. Ooh, negative 7 is less than x plus 3, which is less than or equal to 1. Alright, so that's a lot. Now, if you notice, your variable is in the middle. Okay? Your variable is in the middle. So what you got to do is try to figure out how to get that variable by itself. Okay? So you got to think about it. It says x plus 3. Don't be scared of the fact that it's sandwiched in between two different things. Okay? It's okay. You're still going to be doing. See how it's a positive? What you're going to do is you're going to subtract 3 on both sides. What you do to the middle, you do to the right, and you also got to do it to the outside, the left side. Okay? It's okay. So negative 7 minus 3 is negative 10 is less than x, which is less than or equal to negative 2. So you got to make sure that you read that. Is negative 10 definitely smaller than negative 2? It is. So that's why it is okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to graph that. So I put negative 10 because it's smaller than negative 2. Now the next thing we're going to do is talk about the circles. See how there is no line right next to the negative 10? That means we have an open circle. Since there is a line there, you're going to fill in your circle. Okay. Now, if you see, negative 10 is smaller than x, and x is smaller than negative 2, so what we're going to do is shade in the middle. Okay. Good helpful trick is, if the letter is in the middle, you shade in the middle. Okay, and that's just another way of saying and, that anywhere in here will make your inequality true. Okay, number 11. It says or. Okay, do not be freaked out that it says or. You actually have two separate problems in one problem. It's okay. So I'm going to isolate the x on this side by subtracting 5 here. So I got 3x is less than or equal to 6. And your letter is not by itself, so you got to make it by itself. Okay, that side done. Now I'm going to write down 7 because it was a subtraction opposite. Okay, 5x, okay, is greater than or equal to 30. So what you got to do is divide. And x is bigger than 6. So now what we're going to do is put the numbers on the number line. I'm also going to bring down the word or. Okay, don't be freaked out by that word or. It's okay. So I'm going to put 2 on the number line. I'm going to put 6 on the number line because 2 is definitely smaller than 6. Now, if you notice, they both have lines underneath it. So that means that I'm going to color in that circle. Okay. So let's go into the shading part. So x is smaller than 2. Here is 2. Where are things smaller? They are to the left. Okay? Or x is bigger than 6. Since you're talking about bigger, you go into the right. It is greater. So anywhere in those areas could be a solution. Okay. Number 12. Number 12 is very similar to number 10. And the fact that you don't see the word and, you don't see the word or, you just have the letter in the middle. Okay, we know we're not going to be freaked out about stuff that looks like this. We still need to make sure that you isolate the variable which is in the middle, so you work from your middle out. What you do to the middle, you do to the left, and you do to the right. That cancels. So negative 9 minus 5 is negative 14 is less than or equal to negative 2x. And then it is less than 2. So again, you got to say to yourself, is your letter by itself? It is not by itself. So we got to divide by negative 2. What you do to the middle, you do to the left, you do to the right. And you gotta make sure that you remember that when you divide by a negative, those inequalities are gonna switch. So I get 7 is greater than or equal to because it switches. Here's an x, that switches as well. And there we go. Okay, so we gotta say to ourselves, is 7 bigger than negative 1? It sure is. So that's why it's okay. This actually makes sense to us. If you need to, you could totally rewrite this. So you flip every single thing. Okay? You do not have to do that. But it makes you feel comfortable. So it looks like the format that you used to, you can. Okay. So I got negative 1 here. I got 7 here. So there's no line with the 1. That's why it's open. Then I have a line with the 7, so that's why I close it. And now where's your letter? Your letter is in the middle. So where do you shade? In the middle. Look at that. Okay. And let's see. We got to do number 13 and 14 then. We're going to stop the video. Okay. So it says or. Don't be freaked out that it says or. It's just 2 problems in one. So x plus 4 is less than negative 2. So I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides. So I got x is less than negative 6. I'm going to bring down that word or. And now I'm going to add 7 on both sides. So I got x is bigger than 7. Okay, so that makes sense. So I'm negative 6, and then I got 7. Okay, so now I have open circles, and then I shade x's left. Okay, x is bigger to 7, and you shade to the right. All right, 14. Okay, isolate the variable. Okay, that is, okay, divide by 2. X is greater than or equal to negative 3. All right, so now for the other one, I'm going to subtract 1 on both sides. Negative 5x is less than or equal to negative 1. Divide by negative 5. Uh-oh, we divided by negative. What does that mean? Flip the inequality. Awesome. All right, put a star next to this one, okay? So, let's see. I got negative 3. Then I got 1. Uh-oh, where did it go? It's okay. I'll find it. There it is. Yay. Okay. So I put 1 over 5 here. Now I have lines. I'm going to close the circle. And where do you notice this time? X is bigger than negative 3. Shade to the right. X is bigger than 1/5. Wow. Okay. It's okay. Now, if you had to, you could basically say that negative 3 is bigger. Actually, x is bigger than negative 3, so it's every single thing to this area. Okay? Now, if you had to do it in interval notation, just in case you ever see that, you start with the smallest thing at negative 3. And then it keeps going on and on and on and on. You got arrows here. That means you have infinity. So this one was a little bit special. So we're going to leave off on this note. Stay tuned to part 2.